Hey everyone, this is Schism here. I got a 25-point pitch battle. My Demons versus Dwarfs. Now, this is a nighttime game, so my flash was going off during this game. So if there's some shiny lights or bright pictures, I apologize, or some shading. But anyways, here, starting my opponent's left, he has a cannon with a rune of forging and a rune of burning. So he's got the reroll and the flaming shot. In front of there, he's got 10 of the handgunners, black powder. To the right of that, he's got his gyrocopter. To the right of that, there is 40 quarrelers with great weapons, and in there he has a runesmith with a rune of balance and a 4+ armor. So he's got 2 extra dispel dice, and he steals one of my power dice. In the middle, he's got 40 warriors with great weapons. In there, he has his BSB with Gromrail armor and a rune of resistance. He has his lord, his general, in there with a rune of resistance, rune of spite, and a rune of stone. He has a shield. So right, there's an organ gun, and then there's 40 of the stubborn long beards or great beards or whatever they are, the stubborn great weapon guys. Starting on my left, I have 5 Nurgle Furies. Then I have 5 Plague Drones. I have a Beast of Nurgle. To the right of that, I have a Soul Grinder. And in the middle with my blocks, I have 29 Plague Bearers with a full command. In there, I have a level 1 Herald. He has the Caress of the Lampshade. And on the other corner, there's another level 1 Herald with Spirit Leech. Epidemus in the back rank there. That unit has the Banner of Discipline. To the right of that, there is 39 more Plague Bearers with a full command. They have the Banner of Swiftness. In there, I have a BSB with a Razor Standard and a 5+ Poison Locust. To the right of that, I have the Blue Scribes up on that hill there by the keep. Is 5 Nurgle Furies, and rounding up my forces on the far right flank is 3 more Plague Drones. I win the roll for turn 1 despite having twice as many deployments, and I move up like so. My Nurgle Furies take the far left flank here to try and get out of the line of sight of the long gun handgunners there, and do threaten the flanks. In the center, I move up full bore with my Soul Grinder and my Banner of Swiftness Plague Bearers here, and then you can see my bus unit following suit. On the far right flank, I take my Nurgle Furies. I get him out of line of sight of his Longbeards there, and I take my Plague Drones. The big giant flying turkeys can only move 10, so they don't nearly make it as far. And you can see my Blue Scribes hiding from the cannon because everybody loves to shoot down the Blue Scribes ASAP. For whatever reason, he's behind that rock there, so he's denying line of sight from anything that could possibly see him. And that's a perfect Blue Scribey rock to hide behind. It's the perfect size, so nobody can see him. And I think he's also out of the range of the organ gun at this point. I think that's a little over 24 inches, which is exactly what I want. I just don't want to lose him way, way, way too early. In the magic phase, I try and get off a death snipe, and it doesn't really work. And the Blue Scribes rolled up something that he was out of range to do. I think it was, it was Mind Razor I got this turn, and I threw it on the Furies, even though they weren't going to get in combat, but I guess it's better than nothing. And in the magic phase, I also rolled a 3, I believe it is, 3 or 4, and I got -1 to all my ward saves, so that's fantastic. Dwarf's turn 1, he takes his general's unit of warriors, and he inches it back, as inchy back as dwarfs can go. And he takes his stubborn unit of great weapon dwarfs over there, and he inches that back as well. He takes his gyrocopter up, and he does not want any part of my Soul Grinder this early on in the game, so he parks it right in front of my Soul Grinder just to delay it for a turn or two. Some expensive dwarf chaff there. So my turn 2, I take my Nurgle Furies, and I just charge his cannon to try and get that out of the game so I don't have to absorb too many shots. He missed my Soul Grinder. He got 2 inches away in the first turn with his cannon, and he stuck it in the ground, so it didn't actually hit the Soul Grinder. So my Furies were able to get in there, and I also charged with my Plague Drones here, who took a wound from his shooting phase. So they have 1 wound on them, but they did make the charge. And I take my Beast of Nurgle in the woods, and I take it into the side of this gyrocopter, and my Soul Grinder's in the front. And you can see in this picture, up behind his organ gun, I flew my Furies all the way back behind his lines to charge that organ gun. next turn. And you can see the organ gun's facing the wrong direction because during his turn he misfired, so he can't fire that turn or his next turn. But hopefully after that my Furies will be able to tie it up. And you can see my blue scribes. They do the patented move around the flank there, and they're ready to, if I get Withering, amazing. If I get Enfeebling Foe, amazing. If I get the Panera Bread Pendulum, amazing. If I get, Pit of Shades, amazing. If I get anything in that position right there, it's gonna be amazeballs. So you can see the rest of my army moved up to get right in their face, and it's pretty much for any other army, movement 4, that's your average charge, but for Dwarfs, he's going to need a little something extra special to get in there. I think he's about 11 inches away, which is, he needs an 8, or a regular army would need a 7, which is generally not a problem. So, and you can see the flying turkeys all the way here on the far right, finally making up some ground, ready to go on the flank of his stubborn unit. And in this magic phase, I managed to roll +1 to all my ward saves. Now, in the magic phase, my blue scribes, I do roll Pit of Shades, and he dispels it. He throws everything he has at dispel it. And then I have a few dice left over to throw at some death snipes. He managed to dispel one, but the other one I got off, I just rolled pretty poorly to wound. I believe I did the 2d6 on his Runesmith to try and get rid of that Rune of Balance. And I did 7 hits, and then I did 7 hits, and I didn't get anything through. So in the combat phase, my Plague Drones take out 2 of his long gunners there, or his hand gunners, and which is a pretty paltry effort. But it is enough. He doesn't do any wounds to me, which is enough for me to win the combat. He breaks, and he runs through my Furies there, and he takes a few dangerous terrain, but he passes them all. And I just reform to face the flank of his Quarrelers. And the Furies slap off 2 of the Dwarfs on the cannon. He does nothing to me. But since he's this Dwarf, he's stubborn on a War Machine, and he sticks. And the tally, as you can see in the top left corner, is up to 4. And the Gyrocopter promptly fails his initiative test. I auto-hit with my Soul Grinder, and I do 2 wounds with him. My Beast of Nurgle slimes it off the table. Fantastic. So I just reform to face his Quarrelers. Dwarf's turn 2, it takes his Quarrelers in hopes of overrunning to get out of line of sight of the Plague Drones, because he does not want to take them in the flank. So he hopes to go into the Beast of Nurgle, do a few wounds hopefully, and if not, he's got great weapons, so he can do some damage. And if not, at least break me through combat res for the charge and banner and all that good stuff. I managed to rally his handgunners there, and he reforms to face the rest of my battle lines. Now over here, he tried to get both these units in at once to try and just completely, do as much damage as he could to this horde of Plague Bearers before they got the +1 toughness. So he did manage to fail both these charges, which is most unfortunate for him. Well, I guess if he's going to fail one, it's not so bad to fail them both. But here he is just sitting out in the open with both of his big, beefy units here. So 2 failed charges. Over in the close combat over here, he manages to do 2 wounds to my Beast of Nurgle, which I think he did 7 wounds, but I managed to regen 5 of them. I rolled really good on the regens here, and I took off about 3. I took off 3 or 4 of his Quarrelers here. No, I did 2. I managed to only kill 2 of his Quarrelers, which put me on a break test of, I needed a 4 to pass, and I believe I rolled a 4. Yeah, I did 2 wounds, and I needed a 4. With his charge and his banners and static combat res and the 2 wounds he did, I needed a 4. 4 or 3, but I managed to pass it. So I didn't take any damage on my Beast of Nurgle. So he's stuck there with a Beast of Nurgle, which my Soul Grinder will easily be able to make that charge. And I can still see him with my Plague Drones ever so slightly. In the combat here in the cannon, I completely whiffed. He completely whiffed. I had to take a break test, and I rolled double 6s, and my Furies just go pop. Demons turn 3. I successfully charged with my Plague Drones in the flank. I only managed to clip 1, but that's okay with me. I can always reform later on. and my Soul Grinder goes promptly into the front. Over here, I don't waste any time. I just take my bus and my horde of plague bears and just toss him right into his dwarfs here. And my flying turkeys make it out on his flank. So I'll be able to do some massive damage there, but he will be stubborn, so I gotta wait for him to break, at this point, his rerollable leadership 10. Stubborn. You can see my Furies make it into his organ gun, and you can see my blue scribes move up just so they can, anything I can get in the lower shadow besides the steed will be pretty good at this point. That and Pit of Shades. In the combat here, in the magic phase, I can't cast any of my death spells since I'm in close combat, and I did roll Pit of Shades, and I tried to stretch it all the way out to get to his cannon, but it didn't do anything. It just fizzled out. So actually, it just fizzled out. Over in the combat here, he managed to do a wound to my Soul Grinder, another wound to my Beast of Nurgle, which I feel fortunate of because he had about 13 attacks on that thing. Odds are he would have snuck it because he's strength 5 with a great weapon still, so odds are he'd do a few more wounds than that. I managed to, his Runesmith failed his lookout cert, or not his lookout cert, his initiative test from the Iron Claw, so I allocated 3 attacks to him with a Soul Grinder. He manages to completely pulverize the Runesmith and does 1 more wound to the unit, and the Beast of Nurgle does a few wounds combined with the Plague Drones. He is steadfast, and he manages to pass his steadfast test, so we're locked in combat there. Over here, his Dwarf Lord issues a challenge. I accept with my Plague Champion, and we both whiff promptly, doing no damage to one another. He manages to kill a single. Now, mind you, I still have a 4+ ward in this magic phase, so he manages to kill a single. No, I don't. I lost it this turn. That's correct. That was last turn I had the 4+1. But anyways, regardless, he only managed to kill a single Plague Bearer here, and he allocates attacks on my Herald on the far right corner there, and he does a wound to him. And I managed to do 4 wounds in return. I win the combat, but he sticks around. I believe this round he was still steadfast by 1, because that 1 Plague Bearer he killed, he had an extra rank on me. So in the combat here with the hordes, I go first since he's initiative great weapon and I'm initiative 2. It's pretty advantageous for me. I managed to go and I managed to do 13 total wounds to him between the flying turkeys and my horde of plague bears. I only had 2 flying turkeys in there, so they didn't do too much damage. They never seem to do too much damage. But the big thing is he managed to do 12 wounds back to me, and I ward saved all but 4. So I rolled really lucky there to pull away with only 4 casualties. And that's the momentum I need to really ground down this unit, because it doesn't really affect any of my attacks where I'm already cutting into his. The Furies managed to do 1 wound to the Dwarf crew, but they stick around since they're stubborn with a reroll. Dwarf's turn 3. In the combat here, you can see I reformed with my Plague Drones to get more into combat. He does no wounds to me whatsoever, and I did 9 back to him with all the stomps and thunder stomps included. But he still has that, rank above mine, so he sticks around. 1 more turn. In this combat, his Dwarf Lord does defeat my Plague Champion, so he'll be free to issue a challenge next round of combat. I managed to take off 4 of his number, and he took off the champion in the combat, and he managed to do 2 more wounds besides that. So he did a total of 3. I did 4. I managed to beat him, but he sticks around 1 more time. The Furies and all them, that's a slap fight. They don't do any damage. In the combat here, I go first again because he's an initiative great weapon. I managed to take off 14 of his number in total, so there's not much left there. And he managed to do another 4 wounds to me. My turn 4. There's no movement at all. Everything's locked in combat and a nasty grind. My blue scribes managed to get off Mind Razor, but I rolled really low in the magic phase, and with his Runesmith down and out, he didn't have nearly as much Dispel dice as he usually does, so he actually got Mind Razor off the blue scribes. I put it on my general's unit here in bus formation to try and get some extra kills to boost my tally, to get rid of his ranks, so You definitely won't be steadfast next time. Yes, you gotta take a test here. But over here, I pretty much roll aces for stomps and thunder stomps, and I do pretty well at my attacking. I managed to kill a whopping 16 of these quarrelers with all my attacks combined. So, and he finally finishes off the Beast of Nurgle, but unfortunately is all for naught as he breaks and gets run down by the Flying Turkeys and the Soul Grinder. So, in the combat over here, the Dwarf Lord does finish off the Nurgle champion. I managed to slip a wound past on his BSB, and I do 7 wounds in total to the unit. And the only wounds he does to me is just in the challenge. So Epidemus has to sally forth to the front rank there, and his Lord breaks since he's no longer steadfast, and he gets run down. In the combat over here, we issued a friendly bet between me and my opponent here, and he said I couldn't finish off all the rest of his unit with just my plague bearers alone, and I promptly roll exactly 12 wounds. And since these guys are armor piercing and strength 5 at this point, -3, he had nothing to go off of for saves, so they meet their untimely demise. And at this point, my opponent calls the game with only his cannon on the board and some handgunners in the far corner. So it was a great game. Some notes here: great weapon, intimidation, pseudo-aggression. Now, there's just something scary about having an army that's just completely great weapon oriented. I mean, all of his blocks, he had 3 hordes with great weapons, which is, they're all strength 5 and strength 6, which is pretty good, because, even with that many attacks, or there's that many bodies, you'll survive long enough. And with weapon skill 4 with strength 5, you're just gonna grind. No matter how devastating the unit it is, you're just gonna grind them down. So, I mean, it's a scary thing to run up against, that many great weapon units. And usually, it's something, since you didn't have that many war machines, you can't really castle up, so it's kind of more of a combat oriented list. And usually it's pretty aggressive, but in the case where he's not familiar with the Demon book, he hasn't played him yet, and I was kind of giving him a lowdown of what things do, and he just decided to move back a bit instead of and let me come to him, which is all well and dandy, but due to the lack of amount of units he had in chaff, it was easy for me to outmaneuver him and get the angles in the combats I wanted, especially due to his failed charges, which never helps. His case, at least. War Machines, he just got really unlucky with his cannon a lot. I didn't really do it. I don't think it did a single wound all game. And his organ gun, the potential for devastation with those things is absolutely amazing. But, that one misfire took it out of the game. And that leaves the next, problem is the lack of dwarf chaff. Like, the Furies were able to do their job this game, and if not destroy, but tie up the War Machines. And when he misfired with that organ gun, I was able to get those Furies in position to make sure that thing never fired again. Granted, I think they probably should have killed him, the dwarf crew there, but I just wasn't rolling it. Even when they were strength 5, all I need is 3s and then 3s to kill, essentially, and I still couldn't take that dwarf crew off. So. And also in this game, I know I got the tally up to, as you can see it in the top corner there, I got the tally went up past 28 relatively fast, but I never used the killing blow or the reroll ward saves this game, just because it just didn't seem like a friendly thing to do in a friendly game, especially when he was not familiar with the Demon book, and I didn't really, as you can see, I didn't really need it this game. The -1 to hit and the toughness 5 is deterrent enough. The fact that you need at any sort point in time you think that you need a reroll, ward saves is just kind of redonkulous. So I did not use those this game. I just used the +1 strength and the +1 toughness, and the killing blow, although it would have came in handy to snipe off his characters, once again wasn't really necessary. So the death snipe spells, you can't take Lord Nurgle when you run a list like this, because the poison and the regeneration is pretty much useless. So if you roll on the Nurgle lore, there's a good chance you're gonna get 1, if not 2 spells that are utterly useless to you. So I feel like as if you have to take the death, and death magic with any sort of magic with a plague bearer oriented or a Nurgle themed army. So it's just my wizards are in a pseudo combat unit, so it's more advantageous for me to be in combat, especially with cannons on the table, than it is to sit back and try and death snipe people. So rolling those death spells isn't really what I'm looking for. I'm looking more for the leadership bomb so they can fare fear, or the soul blight so to make it easier for my plague guys to munch on them. So although I do, they could come up big in big situations. The death snipe spells I just didn't really help me out this game as much as I do enjoy casting them. And they are fun because it is a gamble, even if you do get them off to try and do some damage. But when it goes through, taking off an essential character is just priceless. You really can't put any sort of lack of effort or lack of joy into. Yeah, it's just something that it's when it happens, it's amazing. But didn't happen this game. So, especially with the Dwarf's high leadership, even with the banner of discipline, he's still got one leadership on me. So, it would have been an uphill. But if I did sneak something through, it would have been amazing. But it wasn't meant to be. So, thank you very much.